Welcome to the Brainstorm, episode 83. Nick, why are you telling me to transfer all of my money into Robinhood after last week's event?
Okay, Sam. Well, first, Robinhood offers a $5 a month subscription, which is easily the best deal in finance right now. We'll get into it later. The second, it's now a full-fledged digital wallet. And the third, it's actually bringing AI to you, which is a first on Wall Street, I would say.
Okay. Digital wallet. Buzzword. Nick, you know I'm not transferring my money. You know I'm a late adopter.
Well, you're missing out on 2 or 3% depending on where you transferred in.
All right. So. Well, let's get to it. Digital wallet, buzzword in fintech. Everyone's a digital wallet. This. What does that even mean? You're saying now they're a digital wallet? What were they before?
Well, I think digital wallet is a buzzword, but you have to really break it out and think about what makes up the components of a wallet. And I think Robinhood, starting in their brokerage space, has now moved into a full-fledged digital wallet. So then now, after the event, they have peer-to-peer payments, they have a checking and savings account, they have obviously the brokerage account, and so much more that they're packaging. I think if you look at the space itself, it's really interesting. You know, we've been talking about digital wallets since I started almost 7 years ago, and the landscape has changed so much. And each company that we've looked at, if you look at Robinhood, if you look at Coinbase, if you look at Block, you could even, throw Shopify and some of these other companies in there. They're all coming at the same problem or trying to build this, banking suite of applications and features. And they're starting at different points. Robinhood obviously started in the brokerage space. You have Coinbase that started in crypto. You have Square, which started on the merchant side and then acquired Cash App and has, peer-to-peer. So each one is coming with different, what I would consider features. And now they're building around those features to offer something that is more accustomed to what, we see with in the traditional space of a JP Morgan, a Chase, a Wells Fargo that has, really it starts around the checking and saving, and then they offer out, different products around that. These companies just starting at different points, but all moving and offering very similar products.
And so why brokerage? I know you were very excited about the brokerage account. So why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I think
other than the fact that you've just been crushing it and have a great brokerage account.
I wouldn't say that, but I would say that, if you think about the hurdle, as you pointed out in the beginning, I'm not moving my assets over. Getting someone to transfer assets, especially when it's tied into a brokerage account, is much harder than getting them to sign up for a new credit card or a new debit or open a checking and savings account, because you're kind of initially starting with zero. Opening up a new brokerage account, right? That's where the competition is. But when you're transferring accounts, that's, very hard. As in when you've signed on and this is where your brokerage account is, that's a very sticky asset. So for someone like myself, who has been a Robinhood customer for day one, that's typically where an individual like myself is going to keep their assets. You have to do what Robinhood is doing now and offering a 2 or 3%, incentive to move over, as in you move $100,000 over to Robinhood, they'll give you 2% of that over the lifetime that you keep that money there, assuming you sign up with Robinhood Gold. And I think that's why starting at the brokerage space is so important to this conversation, because breaking into the brokerage space at this point in time, it's a very mature industry. It's much harder to do that. So Robinhood being able to move out from the brokerage, I believe, gives them a much bigger competitive advantage than maybe others believe.
Okay, so then just recap it for me, because I might have zoned out or maybe you didn't answer it. What are they doing now that makes them a full digital wallet?
Yeah, so they're changing they have a Robinhood credit card that they've rolled out. It's been available for select customers. I think it was at 100,000. Now it's at 200,000. That's a separate application on the phone. So you have
200,000 users?
200,000 credit card holders. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's at 100. Now they're rolling it out to another 100. So they'll be at 200,000. And the wait list is a couple million people long. That's all of the gold subscribers. So the announcement they made at this event last week was we're changing that credit card app to now a full banking app. So that banking app is going to have checking, savings, You'll be able to make transfers between individuals, and you'll be able to direct deposit right into it. And they had some of that quasi built into the brokerage app, but this is really a more full-fledged banking app that's also tied into your brokerage app. So that's really what, if you were to, point at, okay, what is Robinhood missing in the digital wallet space? It was that kind of pure personal banking component, which they're now going after, and they're going after it in, I think the right way. Additionally to that, like, there's so much to unpack here. We could honestly spend like 40 minutes going
I know,
over
but
all
Nick,
of the details.
we're gonna do our listeners a service, and we're gonna.
Well, let me just fold in the other, I think, really important announcements. The other is Robinhood Manage. So they're now offering a robo-advisory service. So you can hand over money to Robinhood's advisory service, and they'll deploy that capital on your behalf, similar to,
Is that what you were saying?
robo-advisors.
Is that what you were saying? Is them bringing AI to Wall Street?
No, that's Robinhood Cortex.
Okay,
Sam,
good. Because I was going to say robo-advisors. Robo-advisors, I feel like that was like the trend.
Yes,
6 years ago.
That is the trend. And obviously you have, investment professionals, right, that do this on behalf of individuals, human advisors. Then you have robo-advisors. Robinhood is more on the robo-advising side, but really where they're delivering value is on the fees. So if you look at robo-advisors, I believe the stat that they gave at the event was they're taking about 25 basis points on a starter account. But the more money you put into that service, typically how Wall Street has worked is the more money that you put in, the higher the actual embedded fee is. So it's like if you were to deploy 200,000 versus 20 million, where I think the scale that they gave, and maybe we can pull this up, but if you were to deploy $20 million, their fee on that could be upwards of 1 or 2% in a human advisory position when you're working with, private banking and wealth professionals. What Robinhood is doing is keeping it at a flat 25 basis point fee all the way up to $20 million. So on $20 million, you're only paying as an individual $250 versus what could cost you almost $200,000 if you work with certain investment professionals.
But they're just doing it's like, if you're paying that, you get full service as opposed to robo service.
Right. I mean, you get the human touch and element, and yeah, there's reasons why that fee could be higher, but I think Robinhood is taking the approach of we'll get there over time, and they're doing exactly what I think they've done with Robinhood Gold, which is their, subscription offering that is $5 a month or $50 a year if you pay up front. And that is, now you get the credit card, you get 4% APY on checking account and cash. You get all of these different features for a low cost that it just blows away any competition in the market. And I think I tweeted this last week, but it's, that quote that goes around sometimes, your margin is my opportunity. I think Robinhood's ethos as a company is, that quote, right? Like they Robinhoodify.
They're being the low cost provider.
Low cost provider with like the best UI in the business and mobile first ethos and DNA, which is, again, really unmatched.
All right. So then the second point you made, they're bringing AI to Wall Street.
Yes. So Robinhood Cortex, I think it's, we haven't seen, or I think there's still more to understand about exactly how it will be embedded in the process, but having, some AI to ask questions to give potential, not advice about maybe specific names, but be able to deliver you news, and you can ask questions to, why is this stock moving the way it is today, and having it summarized. And I think it's, if you were to, the way that they kind of framed it was, news and all of these different, all of this different data has always historically been behind very expensive paywalls. And now we're going to deliver it to you through an AI that is essentially free to the individual.
Gotcha. So it's, again, that's like the trend we're seeing everywhere, right? It's like all the service providers we use for earnings call tracking or anything like that, they're all layering in their own AI solution so you can ask. And so this is their play
version.
At that. Got it. Yeah. Nice. Okay. And the third point that you were making.
We just went over it.
That was AI was the third point?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. That was nice and snappy. Okay. Then my question, as I hear you saying all of this reminds me a lot of the conversation that we were having about Block, maybe like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So where does Block fit into all of this? Are they doing anything? Right. They were another contender for the digital wallet space. They were coming at it from not from the brokerage
P2P.
side. Exactly. Yeah. So how does this shake out with them?
Yeah, I think I still would consider them a leader in the digital wallet space. But again, when you start from owning someone's brokerage account, which could, result in owning the majority of or custodying the majority of their assets, to peer to peer, where, you're sending 5, 10, you're splitting bills with someone, it's a much harder access point, or, being able to leverage that into a broader suite of banking tools, I think is a bit more difficult. Block has done a tremendous job, though. They have their tax filing system, they have checking, they have savings, they offer crypto, they have a brokerage account. So they do have all of that in Cash App. But I think the way that Robinhood is executed and where they started gives them a bit of advantage over in the long term. And they're going after different markets. I think Robinhood is going after, I would say, like more affluent clients. If, you think about the brokerage business, whereas Block, we did the study, when you and I first started, we watched Max do the study. They've been primarily focused on lower income households in lower income areas. So they've been banking the unbanked, whereas Robinhood has really been giving banking. They're kind of disrupting the bank. And taking the bank's current clients and transferring it over to Robinhood. Whereas I think, Square fits in, and is attacking a different part of the financial services space.
Yeah, I think you did put it well, which is it's very hard for a traditional bank to then compete, because then they have to compete on fees, and that's not something that they want to do.
Well, yeah, and I think you really have to understand in this space, maybe more than any other space we look at, what is a feature and what is a product, right? Because a lot of what we used to talk about 6 years ago and all of these fancy fintech apps that have kind of just become featureized and are now just attached to these larger offerings of a Robinhood, a Coinbase, a Cash App, like that is extremely important to understand, and that, how we invest in these companies is understanding what is a core feature and what is a product. I'll give you a perfect example. A company like Acorns, right, where it used to have that fancy roundup fee every time you made a transaction. If it was like $9.87, you could round up the 13 cents, and it would take that 13 cents, deposit it as
something.
People, I think I was one of the first users of that application because I thought it was really interesting. But if you break that out and think about, is this something that I could then acquire, the majority of someone's assets? Can I tie a checking and savings account? You can, absolutely. But are you in a better position than someone or a company that's starting at the brokerage space? I would argue no, right? I would argue it's much easier for Robinhood to issue a credit card and then offer that roundup, as a feature of the credit card. So that, I think, is really important to understanding, because you have so many different players doing so many different things. Like we could go on about buy now, pay later and how much that's meant to the financial services space and fintech space. Like there is so much happening here behind the scenes, but you do really have to break it out and understand what is a feature and what is a product, because then and only then you can understand like who are the true meaningful players in the market.
And then last question here, can you contextualize the number of Robinhood users and Robinhood Gold subscribers?
Yeah, so let me pull up those numbers because I don't want to quote the wrong figures. But Robinhood, as of the last time they reported the Robinhood Gold numbers, I think they were at 3.2 million. And I think that attachment rate is just north of 10% and has been ticking up each and every time, they launch kind of a new feature around. And
it's like the Amazon Prime, but for finance.
I think Amazon Prime, like the Costco membership, where it's kind of like a meaningless amount of money in the grand scheme of what you get in return.
If you're buying 5 pounds of nuts, what's the subscription fee?
What's a $60 a month subscription to Costco? I just think what they're doing, you haven't really seen this much innovation in the fintech space, maybe ever. And they've done it within like, just the last year alone, the amount of products they've launched into the market would probably, if we were to, look at every other fintech company, dwarf every single other player. So they're just definitely one to watch, and they're pushing the market in the right direction, in my opinion.
Awesome. So we'll track along as I guess what is the thing we're tracking? Subscription to Gold, subscriptions overall, and then AUM. Are those the key things you're watching? Or it's like what are you using as the test for the thesis?
I mean, it's on a funded account basis. And then I think the Gold attachment rate is extremely important to watch, because that, shows your kind of power user,
Mm-hmm.
or, the individuals that are then willing to pay for what has historically been a free service. That attachment rate will tell you, exactly how much brand loyalty or customer loyalty they have. And I think there's plenty of room to grow that $5 a month. I mean, I don't know of any other service other than maybe like Paramount Plus with ads that costs $5 a month. And, what you get behind that $5 a month on a Gold basis is, you can get that money back just by funding a checking account and keeping, essentially $1,500 in cash on Robinhood, because of what you get with APY.
Everything you're saying screams no brainer. What are the people missing? What's Wall Street missing?
Or maybe what we're missing?
Yeah. What are we missing?
Or what? That's the right.
Right. What are we missing, or what is everyone else missing?
Look, obviously things can change. The market is extremely dynamic, right? Robinhood could, essentially move in the wrong direction. We've had we have to address, like, they did have a liquidity issue in the past. Like, things, when you're pushing the pace this fast, there's always, something that can happen that, changes the narrative. But I think they've learned from, being aggressive in the past. I think you won't see that type of behavior ever again from this company. I think if you look at management, what they're doing has all been laid out in a very strategic way to go after what they think is a massive opportunity. And the way that they frame it is, we're going through the largest generational wealth transfer in history. There's $120 trillion transferring from, our parents' generation to us in a lot of ways. And that they want to build a banking platform that allows individuals that are younger, that haven't had access to this type of capital, to be able to, be set up for the long term. Yeah, invest in crypto. And that, that crypto could be an avenue and an area where competition becomes increasingly fierce, right? They're not a crypto first company. Crypto is kind of an add-on. And I think they're moving towards, being aggressive in the crypto space. They're doing an event in 3 months. So they're definitely going after the crypto market. But you have a company like Coinbase that was bred, and born in the crypto space. They obviously, I think it's fair to say, understand it a bit better than a company like a Robinhood. So, that is highly competitive. I think Robinhood's done a tremendous job taking share in that market. But, that could offer a potential, like tangential way and access point of competition that maybe we're not appreciating. But I think, we cover Coinbase. We own it in various funds. We understand, the differences. Coinbase does extremely well on retail and institutional, but, they don't have the equity offering that Robinhood has. So again, you have to understand where each one of these companies is playing and where they're all moving in the same direction. So you have to understand that they're going to compete, and then they're also going to be, friendly in certain areas.
All right. I'll download the app. I'll test it out.
I think you should.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see everyone next week. Maybe, we didn't touch on the XAI acquisition, but maybe we'll save that for another day.